Welcome back. It was a crime which pushed everything else off the front pages. 3 men, all known criminals, found shot dead in the Essex countryside. It was a cold-blooded, professional killing. The victims had many enemies, but which one wanted them executed?
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Jailed gangster Pat Tate gave teenage girls keep fit lessons in a local gym, then lured them back for sexy workouts in his prison cell. The push-up youngsters were a pushover for Tate when he was serving time for armed robbery in Spring Hill Open Prison, Bucks. It was a typical stunt by the swaggering hard man, who believed he was destined to be a Mr. Big in the seedy world of drug smuggling. But he pushed his luck once too often, and ended with his brains blown out on a snow-covered Essex farm track. 2 pals died with him, victims of a cannabis deal that went wrong. The 6'2", 18-stone bodybuilder found the easy regime of Spring Hill very much to his liking. He organised booze parties in the cells and even set up lucrative drug deals with associates on the outside. A prison source said, quote, "Pat got a job as a gym orderly, which meant that he could get special leave to go out and organise workout sessions. He was a very fit man as well as being extremely good looking, and the girls loved him. He would really put them through their paces. He returned to prison with a group of girls who were very pretty and had lovely figures. The girls went into the prison and they had some booze with them. I think the officers knew what was going on, but people didn't want to really mess with him. Pat enjoyed sex and he seemed to get it as often as he wanted. You'd never have known he was serving time in prison." Sex and money were the driving forces behind the astonishing rise and fall of 37-year-old Tate, the news of the world can reveal. Pretty blonde Lizzie Fletcher, who was dating Tate at the time he was killed, said, quote, "Being with Pat was just remarkable. I would walk into a nightclub with him and everybody would move out the way." The pair often went to Raquel's night spot in Rettendon Essex. Lizzie, 22, said, quote, "I felt as though I had the words Pat Tate stamped on my forehead. Everybody would be looking at us. He had this way with people. They all respected him. It was a great feeling being with Pat. It was like nothing I've ever experienced." Another female pal said, quote, "Pat had a tremendous personality and he looked gorgeous. Women would just fall at his feet and he had no shortage of offers. He often had a string of girls around him, but Lizzie was his favourite." One of Tate's former drug dealers, Kevin Sees, told how the hard man ran a lucrative vice trade in Southend, Essex. He said, quote, "Tate controlled Southend and this meant drugs, hookers and most of the clubs. He would give the girls drugs and then send them out to meet clients. They would do anything for him. Tate made thousands of pounds out of his girls and he was well known for the services he could supply. They really doted on him and every now and then he would sleep with them. In the end, most of the girls relied entirely on him for their drugs." An underworld source said, quote, "Southend was Pat's manor and no one worked there without his permission. He had dozens of girls working for him. Many of them were call-out girls who met clients, but Tate also had girls set up in flats and he would take a cut of their earnings. He often had parties and there was always plenty of girls to go round. He did like girls because it suited his image." Sees, 28, who is now going straight, said that Tate once threatened to kill him in a row over drug money. He added, quote, "When I heard he was dead, I did cartwheels. He was a madman who would stop at nothing." Tate's ambition to be a top criminal was born in prison. A source said, quote, "Before Tate knew prison life, he was just a hard man, an uncut diamond. But he learned a whole lot when he was inside. People he met in prison used Tate's menace to get what they wanted, but he soon realised he didn't need them, he could do it himself. Tate even scoffed at the legendary gangsters of the past. He dismissed the murderous Cray twins as a pair of silly little men. The muscle-bound giant was so feared by some prison guards that he ordered them about. Once he fled to Gibraltar after doing a runner from a courtroom and had to be extradited back. Even then, his guards allowed him to pop home and see his girlfriend as he was taken back to custody. The source said, quote, "Tate was given too much of a free run inside. Prison should be a deterrent, but for him it encouraged him to be a more professional villain. Tate lived life on the edge. Girlfriend Lizzie Fletcher recalled how he once smashed a pal's Porsche 928S sports car into a set of iron railings in Southend, Essex. The car was a write-off, but Lizzie escaped injury. Tate was high as a kite on drugs, but police released him on bail. Tate once persuaded Lizzie and a group of girls to join him and pal Craig Rolfe on a trip to Ostend. But what the girls didn't realise was that they had been set up as unwitting couriers for thousands of pounds of the drug baron's ill-gotten gains. Meanwhile, Tate and Rolfe got high and amused themselves by smashing up an Ostend hotel. Lizzie said, quote, "I don't regret knowing Pat, I had a great time." Tragically, the same can't be said for the thousands of youngsters who fell foul of the drug baron's evil trade in death and destruction. The following newspaper article is from the 31st of the 1st, 1999, with the headline, "I'm the Supergrass who doesn't exist." I'm the Supergrass who doesn't exist. I turned in 2 killers, now there's a £500,000 bounty on my head. Officially, he no longer exists. He doesn't have a national insurance number, a passport, a driving licence or a bank account. He still lives with his wife and children, but none of them will ever see their friends again. Their only contact with relatives is the occasional letter passed on by the police. Darren Nichols is a Supergrass. His evidence was crucial in convicting the 2 drug barons responsible for the Essex Range Rover murders 3 years ago. He may have escaped prison, but he still faces a life sentence, living far away from his home in rented accommodation and surviving on just £48 a week dole money. Every day he has to live with the fact that as one of Britain's most wanted informers, he has a £500,000 price on his head. Just one slip, one telltale clue, could put gangland executioners on the trail of him and his family. He said, quote, "I've heard that I'm supposed to be out in South Africa and that I've got a suntan. The reality is nothing like that at all. They never give you a villa abroad and most countries won't take you because you're a criminal. They take away your national insurance number and your driving licence is erased. They take you off the computers, they just vanish you. Everything is a constant lie. I've been offered a few silly jobs but I can't take them. I don't exist. I haven't got a bank account. You get the basic dole money, they find you somewhere to live, and then you're expected to just get on with your life. But it's really awkward. People living near me are starting to wonder. I don't think I'll ever be rid of this." Nichols' crucial testimony at the Old Bailey led to Michael Steele and Jack Womes being jailed for life for the execution of rival drug barons Pat Tate, 37, Tony Tucker, 38, and Craig Rolfe, 26. He drove the getaway car after Steele, 55, and Womes, 36, lured their 3 rivals to an isolated field near Rettendon Essex after promising them a share in a cocaine drop. When the 3 men arrived in their Range Rover, they were blasted to death. Nichols said he had no idea what was happening. He said, quote, "I assumed that I was driving to a drug deal between Mick and Jack and the men in the Range Rover, and that when they'd completed the deal they would call me on the mobile and I'd pick the pair of them up. When I was phoned to come and collect them, I drove into the lane and turned the car round to face back towards the road. Jack got in the back and then Mick got in and the interior light on the car came on. That's when I noticed Jack was wearing white gloves covered in blood. Mick told me to get going. As soon as I started to pull away, Mick started passing the barrels of the gun over to Jack. I thought, fucking hell, what's going on here? Mick said, they won't mess with us again, and that's when I realised somebody had been killed." During last year's trial, the court heard how Steele described himself as the angel of death and boasted that he had done the world a favour. Nichols said, quote, "I don't remember a lot about the journey back. As far as I was concerned, it passed in 2 seconds. It was probably half an hour. I just couldn't comprehend what had happened. I tried to forget it and went into a pub and had a bit to drink. The next day I went back to work. I just tried to carry on as normal, but there was no way I could." In the days that followed, Nichols became increasingly wary of the men that he had first met in jail while serving time for counterfeiting. He said, quote, "They realised that I was a weak link, but they got more friendly towards me. They wanted me to do things with them. They wanted to go flying. Mick was egging me on to come flying and betting me that I couldn't identify my town from an aeroplane, things like that. He said, 'We'll go flying, me and you.' And then he turned up, it was him and Jack. He said Jack could just sit in the back. I thought, there's no fucking way I'm going up in a plane with these 2. It was not long afterwards that Nichols, whose story is told in BBC One's Inside Story, decided to tell everything he knew while being quizzed about drugs offences. His wife, who has not been named for security reasons, said, quote, It must have been around midnight when I got a call from Darren. He asked if I wanted to be with him, and I said, of course. He said he couldn't tell me anything, that I should pack an overnight bag for me and the kids, and if we did what he asked, we would be alright. The police turned up sometime later. The children were asleep. I had to get them out of bed. I can't remember what I told them about where we were going, but they were so sleepy they didn't really take much notice. Choking back the tears, she added, I remember thinking I'm probably not coming back here. I don't know why I knew, but I just did. Mrs. Nichols and her children were moved between safe houses as they waited for the trial to start. Nichols was first kept at a secure unit in Bedford and was then moved to a wing on the Isle of Wight. Mrs. Nichols added, quote, I was like a prisoner. I couldn't go out. I had to rely on a policewoman to take me to the shops. Most of the time, me and the children just sat in the house. We had a television and one sofa. My family couldn't visit. They didn't know where I was. They weren't allowed to know. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. I had panic buttons and alarms all over the place. There were armed police. The stress got too much for Mrs. Nichols. She phoned her husband and told him that if he wasn't with her within a week, she was going home. But the police would not let her leave. They told me I was in danger, she said. They said Mick and Jack had lots of contacts in the underworld. They knew dangerous people. They said, you can't go home, you're putting your children in danger, and if you do that, they could be taken away from you. So that was that. Nichols said, my wife was having a breakdown on the phone, and all I could do was sit there. But despite all the anguish his family has been put through, former drug runner Nichols says he has no regrets. Of all the Supergrasses in the system, I'm the tops, he boasted. I'm considered a major witness. The police really do feel that everyone wants me dead. There's a bounty on my head. I'm not sure how much it is. Some say it's 250,000, others say 500,000. But who's going to collect it? Who do you collect it from? At the trial I tried not to look at Worms and Steele. They scared me because of what I was doing to them. Obviously they hate me. I don't think I'll ever be rid of them. Mick's quite old and hopefully he'll die in prison. And Jack, hopefully when he gets out, will be older and wiser and will just get on with his life rather than try to have his revenge. If their sentences are quashed, I'm particularly worried about what will happen. No one likes the truth, especially the families of the people who did it. But it's something they've got to come to terms with, not me. The family of Jack Worms, who has last week refused leave at a High Court appeal against the sentence, deny any knowledge of a price on Nichols' head. Worms' brother John said, we need him alive because he is the only witness who can prove that Jack didn't do it. But former Detective Superintendent Ivan Dibley, who headed what turned out to be the biggest ever murder inquiry in Essex, has no doubt that Nichols is telling the truth. Quote, it would be almost impossible for somebody like Darren Nichols to actually make up the detail that he gave in court. But whatever happens to Worms and Steele, Nichols still has to come to the terms with being a prisoner, probably for the rest of his life. If you would like to learn more about the Range Rover murders, then click on the video in front of you now. You will also see the Essex Boys playlist, which has all of the videos concerning this case in one convenient folder. Many thanks for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.